Dr. Ruth Miller to present today's message, What Does It Mean to Be Peace? Be Peace. Lessons from King, Gandhi, and more.
Oh, thank you.
I'm really enjoying watching Allison get stronger and stronger and stronger. It's beautiful. Right. I brought my computer because there's quotes I want to read. And that way I could make sure they were good. Hi. I love seeing you all. You probably hear that every time I get up here because it's true. So this week we honor the birth of a remarkably young man who made a huge difference in the time that he was on the planet. January 15 is the birth date for Martin Luther King Jr. And when I was a kid, he was an old man, right? I was 15, he walked through the airport and there was this middle-aged man. Well, it turned out that he started wearing a mustache at 19, so he'd look a little older. And he had been practicing oratory since high school. In fact, he had an oratory instructor and won a contest during those years. So this was a man who knew that he was going to be playing a significant role in people's lives. He went on into the seminary, went on and got the doctorate of divinity degree and all those good things within the context of the historically black churches and colleges. And it didn't occur to him that that was something that was necessary that he be there. Somebody's got something electronic. So if you haven't turned off your electronics, please do. Oh, you've been recorded, Mark.
I thought I heard an echo.
So when Martin Luther King Jr., who by the way was originally Michael, I've shared this almost every year, I'll share it again. When he was born, he was named Michael, but when he was 5, his father went off on a sponsored trip to a Baptist convention in Germany and discovered Martin Luther and fell in love with Martin Luther and all that he had been and done. And so he came back and named his son Martin Luther and took the name himself. So we have Martin Luther King Jr. and Martin Luther King Sr. So that was a pretty heavy load to lay on a 5-year-old, don't you think? Right? The 98 Theses on the door going against the largest institution in the world. Against the largest institution in the world. The U.S. government in the 1950s and 60s. Really, it was. Oh my goodness. So yeah, he lived out that design, that plan. But he didn't really have a process. It never occurred to him when he was a 26-year-old first-time senior pastor in a Baptist church in Montgomery, Alabama, that he was going to end up going against the U.S. government and the whole society. He thought he was going to teach this marvelous philosophy of personalism that he had been learning while he was in graduate school from Thurgood. And it's a remarkable philosophy. In fact, most of you are living it because it says that each one of us mattered, because each one of us is the embodiment of all that is important in the universe. Yeah. So he was there in that church environment, and he was teaching that, and he was preaching on Sundays, and then one of these women, uppity women in town, decided to act on what she had been kind of working out with her friends for a while, and she didn't get up out of her bus seat when someone insisted that she do that. And the whole town erupted and it was primarily organized in Martin Luther King's church. And because he was the great orator, he became the spokesperson. And then he had to figure out a strategy. The strategy was the idea of passive resistance and civil disobedience. Now, any American high school student has heard of this guy called Henry David Thoreau, who wrote an essay called Civil Disobedience. And if they had a kind of a friendly, joyful, jocular teacher, they may have been told that Emerson came back from Ralph Waldo Emerson came back from one of his Chautauqua, I can't say it today, lectures, Chautauqua lectures, and there was Henry in jail, and he says, "My boy, what are you doing in there?" And Henry looks out and says, "Sir, well, what are you doing out there?" The idea of civil disobedience is really the beginning of the American Revolution. The way people didn't pay the Stamp Act was civil disobedience. The Tea Party was part of that. That whole notion that it was possible to just nonviolently refuse to do what the totalitarian state is requiring of us. I'm going to ask you to remember that for the next 4 years.
Okay.
Quietly refuse to do what any totalitarian is insisting you do. Well, when Martin Luther King Jr. began to realize that that was how he was going to be moving, well, it happened that there was this guy over in India who had been doing that while King was growing up. So we have to remember that most of Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas K. Gandhi, he hated that title, Mahatma, by the way. Mohandas K. Gandhi was working during King's growing up years, the 20s to the 40s, right? So that time was very important in King's life. And one of the things that Gandhi understood was that it's fine to do this civil disobedience, but it doesn't have any impact until a whole bunch of people are involved. And so what Gandhi learned to do was to use the media to build public support. We don't very often talk about that part of his work, but it was a teaching that King paid attention to. Because without the focus of the media on some of the things that were happening during the acts of civil disobedience that King was encouraging, nothing would have happened. The media were very important. And if we look at what's going on in the world today, we can see that it's the use of the media that has led to the polarization of our nation and much of the world today. So we want to be aware of that piece of the puzzle. Now, the difference between the folks using the media today to polarize and the folks using the media then to unite is both Gandhi and King were absolutely in love with humanity. All human beings, and that's the other piece of that philosophy that King had learned. Gandhi's efforts, every single one of them, came from the place of loving everyone, even if they appeared to be opponents. So how could he lovingly approach a tyrant? How could he lovingly deal with unjust laws? How could he, in a way that facilitated and empowered well-being for all, undo colonialization in India? Pretty powerful thoughts. He started in South Africa. had he stayed, we never would have seen apartheid. But he felt and was literally called back to India. And in that world, he realized that he really didn't know the country at all. He had been trained by a railroad commissioner, his father, to be a British citizen. And he had been sent to England, and he was an English barrister. And so, you know, he was very proud. If you saw the movie Gandhi, you may recall the scenes where he's very proud of his children for being proper English gentlemen in South Africa. So he took an incredible amount of time, the folks who called him back thought, to go around the country and learn what India is and was at that time. He rode the rails in third class. He walked, he talked, he stayed in villages. He got to know what was really going on in the country, who the people were, and discovered the Hindu scriptures. He had not known about the Vedas and those other scriptures on which Hinduism is based. And so it turns out that his number one spiritual input during the early years of his process were the Beatitudes in the New Testament, because he was a proper English gentleman. And so he was familiar with that piece of literature. And he was an English barrister, and common law is in large part based on, and British common law is American common law, and it's in large part based on the Bible. So he had to know what these assumptions were, and he chose to live his life from the Beatitudes for that first 20-year period of his civil disobedience in South Africa. And you may recall, blessed are the meek, blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the persecutors. These were persecuted, not the persecutors, persecuted. So these were the ideas that he was starting with in his work. And clearly, Martin Luther King Jr., as a Christian preacher, was going to rely heavily on those as well. But in both South Africa and India, Gandhi realized that there needed to be something that Indians could relate to, and the Beatitudes was not going to work. So he actually held a contest, because passive resistance didn't work either. This is not passive. He said, we are aggressive in our nonviolence. Isn't that interesting? So just being passively resistant was not an acceptable idea. And so he held a contest to among the Indian population of South Africa to find a word in Hindi that Indians could relate to. And the man did come up with a word. It was Sada Graha, and Sada wasn't good enough for Gandhi, so he changed it to Satyagraha, which basically means power through being the truth, or truth with a capital T. Power through being truth. Satyagraha. And for him, truth and love were one and the same, in the same way as many of the New Thought churches and centers teach today, because they are both qualities of the one source of beingness. In Hindi, in the Hindu tradition, that one source is called Brahman, and Brahman expresses as individual Atman, but all Atman is part of the Brahman, and that Brahman is the qualities of truth, peace, love, beauty, joy, and life, the ground of all being, alive in each and every one of us. So Gandhi accepted the idea and started working with the word Satyagraha. And he started training people to be Satyagraha, and they became Satyagrahis. Okay? So If you were a satyagrahi, you were being love, and you had that love power, that truth power working in and through you, so that you could show up in any situation knowing you were fully loved and everyone in the room is fully loved and being that love. And you could show up in front of the soldiers with their guns that way. And you could show up in any environment totally ready to be that love, that truth, for the well-being of all. Wow. And that was the message that Martin Luther King Jr. took from observing Gandhi. A, use the media. B, be that which you wish to be. Now, we have all been told that Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. I grew up believing Gandhi said that because my grandmother worked for Gandhi. But there is a biographer out there, and now it's starting to show up in a lot of places on social media, so I thought I'd prepare you. This biographer says that Gandhi never said actually that. His name, the biographer, is Joseph Ranseth, and he actually wrote an article called Gandhi Didn't Actually Say, Be the Change You Wish to See in the World. And his quote that he says Gandhi has written. Now, Gandhi wrote 3,000 words a day and sent them out by various newsletters and media channels everywhere in the country. So I'm guessing this guy has not read everything Gandhi wrote, just off the top of my head. But the quote that he uses, which is actually very relevant in the world today, we but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the inner world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do. I'm going to accept both of those. Because that realization that what I have been experiencing in the world is a reflection of what's in here empowers me to change my experience. As I shift and change, the world around me shifts and changes with me. As I am living in a way that is in alignment with the divine, the world aligns with the divine. As it is in my heart, in my brain, in the mind field that I am, it must be around me. Jesus put that, it shall be as you believe. Who am I? That's the question, not what is the world like. Because the world will show me who I am being, who I have been being. In my life, generally, it takes about, well, for significant things, it's instant. But on a day, for the general stuff, it takes about 3 weeks for the world around me, for the body and the world around me to start showing me what I've been being. There are some things where literally it happens within 24 hours and I go, oops. I call that instant karma. But in most cases it takes about 3 weeks. So if I'm practicing satyagraha for a week, I'm not going to get immediate results. because it takes a little while. Mostly because I got all these conflicting beliefs that are also getting in the way of that, right? And they got to get worked out too. Right? What a lot of the teachers that have been working with these principles have been saying is, therefore, if you want to have a heavenly environment, guess what? Become heaven. Focus your thoughts and feelings and energies and visions and imaginings on the heavenly experience so that the world around you can be heavenly. And if you focus your thoughts on what we might call hellish experiences, unfortunately, that tends to become one's actual physical experience. My daughter's best friend was evacuated in LA. And I lived in that area for a while too. And my good friends grew up in Altadena. And I recognize that this is a hellish experience. But I've also not been able to watch a movie produced in that area for, well, not more than 1 in 20, for decades, because of the focus on the violence and the destruction that has become the essence of the thought processes and feelings in that area of this planet. If what Gandhi is teaching, if what these teachers are teaching is accurate, then we can look at the last several decades of mudslides and floods and small fires and wildfires in that area as wake up, people. And the waking up didn't happen. Because we haven't learned that what is inside us must be our outer experience in this culture. And I have friends who are very carefully not watching the news around Southern California because they have been threatened in the past with wildfires, and they're learning and doing everything they can to hold a consciousness in which that is not part of their personal experience. And it's an amazing experiment. I'll keep you informed on that one. When we focus on what is not working, we get more that is not working. I hate to say that, because we have been trained to solve problems and find the problem and fix it. And believe me, I've got a degree in environmental studies. I was a futurist. I was finding problems and fixing it. I was community development. I've done this work. And only when we were building a community of well-being did it last. Never when we were trying to undo something that wasn't okay has it lasted. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
To be peace is to experience it in the world around us. Oh my goodness. What do I do with all of my studying war? Because there is that piece too. My mother worked for the Defense Department all her life. I can tell you all kinds of things about the military situation on the planet, even today. And when I find myself going into that space, I can feel that shift in the body that says, this is not where you want to be living. This cannot be the reality that you choose. And so I go back to the various news feeds that I have that tell me the wonderful things that are going on in this world. The last verse, I'm going to shake hands with everyone, everywhere I go. We in this world today have more people building good, positive, well-being processes and technologies and systems than at any time in the history of this culture, the 6,000-year culture. It's happening. That's the reality of this world. If we focus on that which we're afraid of or concerned about or we've been trained to think are problems, we're going to get more of them. But when we focus on, yes, the water is here, how can we hold on to it? Guess what? 40 villages a year in India no longer have water running past them into the ocean. For 10 years. It's 400 villages who used to have soil that was as hard as this pulpit, that have soil that is flourishing and encouraging. In Africa, millions of trees in many, many, many places around the edge of the Sahara and other places, that people have learned how to retain that which is important to them, rather than fight against that which seemed to be the problem. Feel the difference? Mother Teresa used to say, I won't go to an anti-war demonstration, but the next peace demonstration, I will be right there. And in many ways, that was what Women in Black was all about. Those of you who are even aware of it. It was a group of women in the Gaza, and grandmothers in the Gaza all wear black. It's whatever it is. It's part of the cultural tradition. And so they would keep their ears on the network. And when the network was suggesting that maybe there was going to be a violent uprising in such and such a place, they would just all go and congregate. And sometimes they pray together, and sometimes they just chat. And the grandmothers filled the space, so there wasn't anything else could happen, right? So the grandmothers in Gaza were related to grandmothers in Argentina, and mothers and grandmothers in Argentina started to do the same thing, because they were dealing with some of the same issues in Argentina as they have been in the Gaza. And they also were standing in solidarity with their relatives. So then a bunch of the people in Argentina are working with Italian companies. So some women in Italy started doing the same thing, and they would stand in public places, just groups of women in black. And sometimes they would have signs and they would say, "Women in black, being the peace we wish to see in the world." Well, a woman from Woodstock who was teaching Italian went to Italy to take her class and have them learn, be immersed in the Italian culture. And she saw these women in this plaza standing there in black, and she read the signs and she joined them. And when she went back to Woodstock, she put an ad in the paper. And the little classified ad said, "All women who want peace in the world are invited to join me on the courthouse steps at 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon. We will be wearing black." At 1 o'clock on Monday afternoon, she showed up with her sign in English, not Italian, and was wearing black, and she was alone. That was scary. She stood there, closed her eyes, and just radiated all the peace she could radiate. And when she opened her eyes, a dozen women were coming up the steps in black. They continued that for almost 20 years. I discovered it about 10 years into the process because I was at an institute, a peace institute in Dubrovnik, Croatia, which Dubrovnik is the place where war did not happen, okay? And you Game of Thrones fans, the throne is on the island outside of Dubrovnik. I came around the corner and there it was. But we were at this institute and she told us this story. And we all said, oh, we gotta do this. Well, we were in a different country and some of us didn't have anything black, right? So we're all exchanging clothes to try to be wearing black. And on the very last night of this institute, as all the hundreds of people are going into the banquet, we're standing outside the banquet hall in black with signs saying, women in black standing for peace. One person is assigned as the spokesperson. And we just stood there, radiating peace, feeling that peace in us, feeling it moving out, feeling the people coming in, experiencing it. Well, what we didn't know was that that day was the day that the place we were meeting had the whole city coming to do an event. So we had the whole city coming in past our little group of women in black with this sign. We ran out of the written descriptions of what we were doing. So one of the people really ran into the hotel, the office of the building that we were in, conference center, whatever, convention center, and was able to get a few more copies printed out. So I have a Unitarian group in Grants Pass I helped to found, and I was sharing with them my trip to this Peace Institute, told them about this, and they said, we gotta do this. So we had a dozen women every Monday afternoon in solidarity with the other women on Monday afternoon, standing near the bronze statue of a family in a park that had been built by Rotary for Grants Pass. And we did this for an hour every day. Sometimes in Grants Pass, basically from May to September, the weather gets a little intense. Some of you may know this, we were averaging 100 degrees a day. This was a decade or two ago. So it was pretty amazing before all of this kind of heating up happened. And I was aware that these wonderful women, some of whom are now in their 80s, grandmothers, wearing black in the sun in Grants Pass, were putting their lives at risk. And so I started a practice that kind of blew me away. But I want you to know what happens when you know you are peace and the world can be heavenly. One last little bit, and then I'll let you go. We stood there in this park, which happens to be about 50 feet from the Rogue River. We were standing, there were some trees and some bushes on the edge. And I started inviting the cool air from the river flowing on the surface of the river to come join our circle. Literally. And it did. We started having this cool breeze every time we met in this wonderful little spot in this park in Grants Pass. And these people were no longer in a life-threatening condition. Blew me away, literally, every time I sing this song that we did today. Now, spirit of life, spirit of love, blow. Oh, I need to say that piece. The reason it says blow is spirit in Hebrew and in Greek is also breath and wind. So there's another dimension to that song. When we are that which we wish to see in the world aligns along the lines of what we are being. And it will align along the lines of what we are being regardless. So choose, and choose carefully, to quote Goethe. Choose. The world will be what you are. I love you all, and I know you are all committed to a world of love and peace and well-being for all beings. That means all beings. There are no opponents. It's all us. Blessings and thank you.